What would happen if you started life in another world from zero? What would happen if you went through an entire year of pain and suffering to become the man you are today, only to then start your life from zero once more, only hearing echoes of the man you once were? ReZero Arc 6 Phase 3 comes to address just that, and is in my opinion, some of the most impactful, gripping, and mysterious ReZero content to date. For clarification purposes, I have technically read two phases for this video. Witch Cult Translations categorizes this as Phase 3 and half of Phase 4, but the PDFs I read are compiled so that they follow the light novel volume releases. So to me, everything I'm about to talk about is Phase 3 or Volume 23. I quite literally mean it when I say that this is peak ReZero content. What usually takes me about a week or so to read through, I read in 3 days. Phase 3 opens up and doesn't waste our time at all, like some Amnesia plots might. We don't spend pages and pages floundering around about as Subaru, or who I will be referring to as Nubaru, tries to understand that he lost his memories. Instead, he pretty much realizes it instantly. He links that his clothes are entirely different, his body feels stronger, the calluses on his hands are tougher, and one of his arms is now fully blackened. Amelia and Beatrice are, of course, heartbroken by this development, as is Julius, as he has now lost the final connection he had to his previous life before being consumed by Gluttony's authority. He lost the one final thing he didn't realize he still had, the sole person who remembered him. We see subtle signs of people being deeply impacted by Nubaru's lack of familiarity with these people, as Ram was annoyed by Nubaru referring to her with a suffix. Betty was hurt by him not calling her his affectionate nickname of Bayako, and Amelia was taken aback by him using Chan rather than Tan. This isn't where the hurt ends, of course, because now nobody remembers Rem, and it's tearing Ram apart. She has nowhere to throw her frustration to because Nubaru is not a fair target. She breaks down in front of him and admits for the first time how much she trusts in Subaru. Usually ReZero is time for Subaru to suffer, but this time, everyone is getting their fair dose of pain. After the roundtable discussion of Nubaru not remembering anything, they hold yet another roundtable where Anastasia reveals that Echidna body swapped to the party, and everyone manages to take it pretty well considering the day is already off to an awful start. Nubaru begins to feel the pressure of how much the memory loss has impacted his party, and equates it to Armageddon being near if these people are relying on him. He begins to feel like a burden because he can't remember so much. While discussing things at the roundtable, Echidna asks Nubaru a simple question. What does that term you speak quite often of, parallel world, mean? Nubaru then comes clean, but he also wasn't understanding of why Subaru never came clean to begin with. The party understood it as him being from beyond the Great Waterfall, and they more or less moved on. They didn't really care that much, which is funny. If I had to guess, it's because it's more of a puzzle piece being slotted in rather than a massive revelation about Subaru, and they do already know that Al is from beyond the Great Waterfall. They also discuss how people lie about being from beyond it, since it's impossible to disprove. Usually I save light novel changes for the end of the video, but I find it important to mention that this entire conversation is gone. It's sad, because I found it super interesting, but I assume the author has better plans for it in the future. While they attempt to find out how Nubaru lost his memories, he begins to screw around because if he was isekai, then he must have some crazy power, right? No. And then he wants to try magic. Sorry bro, you can't do that or you die. He's pretty bummed out because of this, and the party decides to suspend the search for now for his memories and go upstairs for a bit, leaving Nubaru behind. He wanders around the tower before he gets to a very long spiral staircase, and suddenly something pushes him. He plummets down the tower, vomiting and screaming as he falls, and cries out for his mother before he splats on the ground. He resets right before anybody found out he had amnesia, right back in the green room. Nubaru, obviously, does not understand what just happened to him. He assumes he passed out again like he did in the library, as if his mind is just rejecting him falling to his death. Amelia and Betty thankfully are pretty quick and notice that Nubaru is not on the same page as them. Nubaru finally understands his power. Precognitive dreams. Sure man, you'll get there. Nubaru also realizes that nobody has ever mentioned this precognitive dream ability to him, so Subaru must have never told anyone for some specific reason. Perhaps it interferes with the dreams? Regardless, he decides to follow the same choices seen in the dream, except instead of staying separated near the end of the previous loop, he goes with the party and hears Echidna and Ram calling into question Nubaru's sanity, doubting the parallel world story. Nubaru quite literally runs from the situation, gets to another staircase, and gets pushed down. He tumbles down every single step. Reset. He wakes up vomiting and screaming in agony. He retreats to the corner, to which Amelia tries to pat him on the back and reassure him, but that touch on his back only reminds him that someone killed him. He runs out of the green room and just keeps running. He doesn't trust anybody in this tower. He's in a panic, afraid of death. He feels like he's rotting from the inside, marching towards his inevitable demise, and seeks refuge in the worst place possible, the examination room with Reed Estrella. Reed, of course, taunts him and beats the absolute shit out of him, and Nubaru tumbles out of the room and begins to think back to his parents. He wishes he at least told them "see you later" one last time. The reason he didn't? He didn't want his mom to tell him to wash a cup of cocoa he left in the sink. Now, in this hopeless place where he faces death around every corner, and all he can think about is how he didn't get to say goodbye to his mom one last time. Suddenly, a shadow of death appears, wearing Nubaru's face. It laughs at him, and Nubaru accepts that while he is going to die here, he refuses to die to the shadow. He begins to pummel the shadow, screaming all sorts of things until he mentions something about his looping ability, and apparently somebody overheard this because Satella appears. She keeps saying she loves him and slowly caresses his heart. When he snaps out of that RBD conditional state, he collapses to the ground, throwing up more and pissing his pants as he just begs to die and get this over with. Chapter 40 opens up with Nubaru just laughing to himself. He dies and he comes back. He dubs it Return by Death. That was the blessing that God had bestowed upon him. He trusts no one in this tower, and is actively trying to determine which of the people in it is trying to take his life. And he begins to gear up to leave the tower by taking some supplies from the party. He opens the door and runs out, but immediately runs into one of the worm witch beasts, and gets attacked by assumedly Shala before getting sucked into the sand, barely making it out of there alive. He finds himself in a huge underground area filled with sand. His supplies that he stole lost to the fall. He crawls around this dark expanse looking for anything, following a sweet scent underground, until he comes across a door with 7 jewels, and when he touches it, 4 of those light up. Then in the blink of an eye, he's back in the tower. If we jump back to the end of phase 1, when they finally encounter Shala, she looks at Subaru and says 3, but now the door is telling us 4. What exactly happened between then and now to make it say Subaru has an additional witch factor? Was it when he completed the first trial? Probably not, as he could feel witch factor settling into his body. Was it the event that made him lose consciousness, and the books are simply a red herring? It is possible. Let's also think about the floors of the tower. They are all named after the stars of Pleiades, and my initial theory is that Merope was missing because Flugel was from a period of Japan where Pleiades was only known to have 6 stars, but perhaps this is untrue. Merope, also known as the Lost Pleiad, because she was not seen by astronomers at first sight, could very well be that underground expanse or where the door leads. What if the watchtower quite literally watches over the witch's tomb, as in it's on top of it? Merope, a floor located at the very bottom of the tower with a door out of sight, which is where Satella's seal lies. Merope in Greek mythology is the faintest star in the cluster because she was the only one of her sisters to marry a mortal. Subaru must acquire all 7 of the witch factors to enter the Merope floor. What also makes this theory seem plausible is the intense smell underneath, which is presumably the miasma coming off of her tomb, something Subaru was not able to smell before but now apparently is. Nubaru returns to the tower in rage, the miasma entrenched deep in his body by this point. Tears stream down his face as he grabs a knife and pledges to kill every single person in this tower so that they cannot kill him. He goes upstairs and finds Shala's body, her head crushed, blood everywhere. This is Nubaru's first time seeing a corpse, and he vomits and stumbles around. He continues searching and finds Ram also dead, with a hole through her entire body. After more investigation, he finds Julius dead with what looks like hundreds of cuts, and Melee dead right under him. The only 2 bodies he cannot find are Emilia and Beatrice, until he begins to get chased by a shadow through the tower. He runs and runs and runs until he gets to the green room and finds Patrichet, still alive. Patrichet bites into Nubaru's shoulder and begins to run from the shadows with him. They narrowly flee for a while until Patrichet throws Nubaru up onto a balcony to save him from the shadows, and her body gets swallowed up. He sits on the balcony, lost, his body spilling blood from the bite wound and miasma coursing through his body. The shadows creep up onto the balcony, and he hears a voice that he doesn't recognize say, "Next, try guessing, hero." He resets as he is decapitated. Who is this mystery person? I do have a crack theory. It was specifically pointed out to be a voice that Nubaru had not heard, and the only person in this tower whose voice he has not heard is Rem. The unknown voice, alongside the use of the word hero, which is what Subaru is to her, leads me to believe that something could be possessing her body. Where are Emilia and Beatrice? Well, I have no idea. Beatrice probably dissipated on death, and I'm not entirely sure what is going on with Emilia. Nubaru resets in the green room once more, and decides to take a new approach. He will act just like Subaru would so as not to inform a single person of what happened to his memories. He's attempting to operate as normal. He's paying close attention to everyone in this loop, trying to gather info on who might have wiped his memories, and initiates a conversation with Julius about the conversation they had last night, despite not knowing at all what it was. All he hears is that Subaru and Echidna were engaging in connivery, and this sets up Nubaru to begin distrusting his old self. He had Shala planted in case Julius tried to kill him, and after their talk, he gives Shala a hug so as not to take advantage of her like the old Subaru would. He doesn't really know where else to turn, so he decides to go after the one thing he can trust, Patrichet, who funnily enough in Arc 4 was also the first living being he could accept loving him after the trials. Melee stops him on his way to go meet with her, and asks him to talk about what they talked about last night. Nubaru blinks, and Melee is dead on the ground. He notices the bruises on her neck, as if she had been choked, and looks at his wrists, which are covered in scratches from when she fights back. He rolls up his sleeve to investigate his injuries, and in Japanese kanji finds Subaru Natsuki was here carved into his arm. Nubaru cannot even trust himself. He finds Subaru to be a monster who cannot be trusted at any costs. If Subaru is able to come back in certain instances, it's almost as if this isn't as simple as memory loss. Something weird is going on. Nubaru remarks that Melee is the one person he will not suspect of killing him next loop, but in my opinion, it should be the opposite. Subaru choked that kid out for a reason. He stuffs the body under a table and runs into Emilia again, who notices how emotionally destroyed he seems, and she embraces him. He can't help but think, Are these people really evil? Are they really out to get him? What if he fell down the stairs by accident? Is he the one with an ugly heart? Suddenly, everyone begins to scramble. Something terrible's happened. Nubru and Amelia go to the library, and Melee Portrout now has a book of the dead in the library. Nubru is the one chosen to read this book, as he and Julius have already opened the books and been fine, and Julius is in no state to have his mind altered. He cracks open the book. Their minds fuse and become one. Melee once knew nothing, but was taken by a beast and brought to Elsa on Mother's behalf, who said she was told to have Melee accompany her. Melee forgot everything: how to mourn, how to resist, how to live. She was taught all of this again by Mother and Elsa. After Elsa died, Melee did not know how to properly process it, being emotionally stunted and still a child. She lived her life imitating her loved ones, but with Elsa's demise and her captivity in Roswell's mansion, she had nobody to turn to. She found some purpose in being used to help the party traverse the sand dunes, and after uncovering the Library of the Dead, she hoped to find Elsa's book, but instead ran into Subaru. He was acting normal at first, but she scurried off in shame. When she came back, Subaru was already lost. He was not acting the same at all, as if he was possessed by something. And the next day, Melee wanted to continue the line of conversation with Nubru, who in this loop had not reported his memory loss. Nubru blacked out from the questioning though, and Subaru talked about how Melee broke the rules and strangled her. He made remarks such as maybe next time or this time, as if whatever is possessing Subaru is aware of her turn by death, assuming it's not Subaru. After the book's conclusion, Nubru drops it and slowly attempts to unwrap his mind with Melee's. I would also like to note that Shala looked down at the book right after he dropped it, and it seemed like she was very aware of its contents and what Nubru did to her. Nubru's head is spinning with their mixed lives, and she now resides within Nubru, as if he has 3 personalities. He himself equates it to schizophrenia. Subaru, Nubru, and Melee. He is stuck in shock as everyone tries to ask him questions, and he gives them a half-hearted lie about her death and body location. The narration really does feel like it's written by 3 people, and at the same time, the narration fits with this fully. It's scattered, the tone changes, its desire changes. Nubru begins to think, if the Book of the Dead is capable of all of this, what if he killed every single person in this tower and peered into their books to find what they really believe? He wonders why Amelia and Beatrice treat him so kindly. Nubru is quite literally Subaru's imposter syndrome personified, as he is unable to recognize his changed true self. Have you ever wondered what the people in your life really think about you? I mean, really think about you. It's something that you will never know. Your friends, your loved ones, your family, they all have thoughts and opinions that you will never be capable of understanding. Nubru has that answer. He understands the Book of the Dead. If he kills everyone in this tower, he can know their true intentions and feelings about him. He begins contemplating all the ways he can kill Beatrice right here and right now, something that the Melee voice in his head does not assist with. He has completely and utterly lost it until Bayako notices the scratches on his wrist. Obviously, she does not equate it to the murder of Melee, but instead she remarks that the scratches on his wrist are familiar, as if Subaru had started self-harming at some point off-screen. This not only takes Nubru off guard, but also the viewer. Nubru, who thought Subaru to be this evil, cunning mastermind, has potentially been harming himself. Bayako heals the scratches and it completely soothes him. A calming aura passes over him and he thinks he can't possibly kill her right now. The group fails to find her body, and Arinda convinces the party to put the search to rest and instead go take the examination tomorrow. When pressed as to why, she reveals to them that her possession is slowly draining Anastasia's ode, or her life essence, so she implores them to go as fast as they can. The group settles down to get some rest, and Nubru sneaks out to move Melee's body, but it's gone. Remember how I pointed out earlier that Shala noticed the book? I'm almost positive that she moved it to cover his ass. As he scrambles to try and find her, Ram walks into the room and accuses him of being a fake Natsuki Subaru, someone who needs to study the real Subaru more. He feels cornered, and the only thing he can think of is to try and resort to violence, but this reveals that this was a trap all along, as he gets put into an ice cage by Amelia. Ram wants to basically interrogate Nubru because she fears that he is Capella, the shape-shifting Sin Archbishop. Amelia wants to kindly ask him because Subaru always has a reason for doing what he does. Upon the mention of the name Capella, the Melee inside Nubru thinks back to when Mother turned her into an innumerable amount of frogs before being put back together, essentially confirming that the mother she refers to is Capella. Nubru finally reveals he has amnesia, to which Ram truly does not believe. Their disagreements boil over, and Ram and Amelia begin to fight. After Amelia gets pushed away, Ram walks over and knocks Nubru the fuck out. When he wakes up, he is outside of the ice cage with a dislocated shoulder. Amelia and Ram are gone, but all around him, Natsuki Subaru was here is etched into the walls. This isn't the only thing. Reed Estrella is also here, outside of his examination room. Nubru is basically pissing himself in fear, and Reed walks up and puts his shoulder back in place for him, then says he's just gonna peace out. The bottom of the watchtower is now full of a herd of centaur witch beasts, and Julius is fighting for his life down below. Reed jumps down the spiral staircase and absolutely pulverizes some of the centaurs and forces Julius into a fight against not only the centaurs, but also against Reed Estrella. Nubru thinks back to his plan to read everyone's true intentions in the book, but after what happened with Amelia and Ram, and watching the fight between Julius and Reed, he realizes he has nothing. His plan would never work. He can't kill any of these people. he's powerless. Julius looks up at the shaken Nubaru and screams at him to protect Anastasia, and before his body could even think, he gets up to run and find her. He immediately runs into Beatrice and Aridna noting that he made it out of the ice cage. Aridna points her fingers at him as if she has a loaded gun because Nubaru is an untrustworthy fake, but Bayako stands between them. Aridna gets into a literal screaming match with them, and Nubaru is tired of fighting. He gives up, and Aridna accuses him of the tower falling being his master plan to get to the witch's shrine. Aridna also calls his amnesia an act, and this causes Nubaru to begin to blow up. Act? Act, you say? Give me a break. If it's acting, then isn't it obvious I'd act with much more determination? Who would like to become Natsuki Subaru by their choice? Who would become that disgusting guy? Nubaru continues screaming. Who do they think they are? Who do they think he is? He was just coming back from the convenience store. He never wanted any of this. A watchtower, examinations, star keepers, sages, magic. He's just a 17-year-old kid who didn't get to say goodbye to his mom and dad. A boy who lost everything. He starts to plead to God, any god out there. He didn't know what other option he had. End his punishment. Let him see his parents again. This is the side of Subaru from Arc 1 we don't get to explicitly see. The Subaru who comes to this land and tries desperately to hold it together. Arc 6 serves as not only a deconstruction of Arc 1 Subaru, as well as a manifestation of his current imposter syndrome. Oh, and then a scorpion Shala appears and starts blasting. The blasts were blocked by an incomplete EMT by Bayako, but Aridna was still knocked off balance by the blast and almost plummets to her death. But Nubaru's body moves before he can think again, and he grabs her. The scorpion runs off, and Nubaru realizes its tail was blown off. But wait, there's no burn marks, or marks that indicate it was cut off by force. A flash of bright light, leading to something that should have killed Nubaru, but a small girl absorbed the blast for him, turning to nothing but dust. Nubaru drags Aridna's body through the tower, her legs completely blown off. He grabs a small rock to put her out of her misery, but the thought of taking somebody's life, even in mercy, was something Nubaru was not capable of doing. She realizes this, and apologizes for ever doubting him, as she draws her last breath. Nubaru, having been apologized to for failing to make her death quick and painless, despairs. He wants to die. He wants everyone on this planet to demand his execution. There's no way you could ever have the right to solely occupy a part of others' hearts, no matter how small it may be, you filthy wall stain. You, an existence like the dust accumulated in the corner of a room, like the maggots which swarm over a pile of pure garbage, like a scar which never disappears located in an eye-catching spot. Natsuki Subaru, why won't you die? Even after dying, all that awaits is redoing? Who decided that? Who made sure that it would continue eternally? If once isn't enough, then die 10 times. Die 100 times. Die until you disappear. Die until you vanish from anyone and everyone's memories, until you're no longer able to affect anything at all, until your name, your existence, your vestiges no longer remain in the hearts of anyone. He repeatedly cries out over and over that he wants to die. He wants to be destroyed, but each time he remarks this, someone tells him they love him. On, and on, and on, until a black shadow fills the space around Nubaru. Suddenly, Emilia chimes in that is as far as you go. Nubaru continues on about how he wants to die, but Emilia begins to recount how they first met. Does he remember? No, but she does. She remembers all the great things Subaru has done to help not just herself, but Ram, the village of Arlem, and perhaps even the sleeping girl known as Rem. She says her name is Emilia and asks, what's his name? Nubaru explodes. Putting your life on the line for someone else, sprinting into action for someone else, is he really capable of doing such things? Why did it have to be him? Why did they entrust so much to a man who can't do anything? And Emilia stops him once more. Her name is Emilia. Just Emilia. What's his name? The man that Julius had trusted, the man that Beatrice believed in, the man that Echidna had forgiven, and the man that Emilia desired. If Natsuki Subaru can do it, why can't Nubaru? Nubaru's name is not Nubaru. His name is Natsuki Subaru. He wants to save them all. He wants to help them all. If that can be done by Natsuki Subaru, then he will do it. Shadows begin to fill the tower, and Emilia gets knocked out of the tower, falling into darkness, to which Subaru jumps out of the tower and grabs a hold of her body, plummeting into the dark void. Even if they forget, even if they don't remember the words that he struck in all of them, he will remember. He will remember everything. Because even now, even if he has to cling onto them, he will not forget them. Any of them. Always remember, Natsuki Subaru. Before I get into the review section, I just want to touch on the few light novel changes I'm aware of. This includes stuff from Phase 2 that I recently found out. Phase 2, the witches' backstories besides Typhon and Minerva's were cut, which is a shame. And actually, Subaru does speculate that Merope could be an underground area. Phase 3, the Great Waterfall Convo is cut, which is very sad, so nobody canonically knows that Subaru is from another world in the light novels. I assume Taipei is just going to save it for a different moment. When Subaru found the door underground, when he touched it, it turned into 7 doors, 4 of which he could open. I'm not sure what was on the other sides of the doors, however. Finally, upon entering the tower, Subaru did not grab a knife or have tears streaming down his face, he was just enraged. Alrighty then, let's get into the review section for Phase 3. For negatives, I have absolutely nothing. This phase was the definition of peak fiction. Taipei managed to make memory loss compelling by not only focusing on how Subaru feels, but also how the people around him feel and react to this development. Instead of spending chapters and chapters retreading the same shit we already know, it's used to show Subaru's impact on others' lives, as well as a deep dive on Arc 1 Subaru, as well as a manifestation of his imposter syndrome. Subaru was great. He basically speedran his prior developments and progression in a stark reminder that this arc is about memories, and how people are ultimately shaped by our experiences, and to be ready to be Natsuki Subaru, he once again must endure that hell to get there. Arc 6 is almost like showing Subaru what it would be like if he truly died. Emilia reminiscing about their introduction and all he's done, Betty crying about her contractor, Ram being beaten down by Subaru's memories, and the legacy that Subaru leaves behind. One of Taipei's biggest strong suits is his character writing. I find his characters so unbelievably compelling, and he handles them so far with an unbelievable amount of care. And believe it or not, the pacing was flawless this phase for me. I was glued to my screen reading into this shit the entire time. Genuinely 10 out of 10 content. So for my expectations, number 1, Subaru will fall pretty far mentally. I guess I can mark this one off. Bro is pissing his pants and begging to die. Garfield's mother's memories are obviously still not being addressed. No Trader news, no Owl news. Subaru being isekai to assemble the witch factors has had a massive boon this phase with the underground door. I'm gonna mark this one a little bit, because I'm seriously thinking that this is the endgame goal here. Obviously no serious news, no Pedal Juice spirit problems yet, but when he first killed Melee, it described how like his fingernails were all fucked up, and I thought that Pedal Juice actually possessed him and killed her. Fox Echidna is just straight up good. I was totally wrong about this. More info about people beyond the Great Waterfall. I mean, I guess technically they discussed it, and we learned some people like to lie about it, so I'll mark it. It was cut though, so it's kind of in a weird stasis. Dragon's Blood, obviously not solved yet, still nothing on the Shadow Garden, still nothing on Roswell, and Shala will become an enemy in a loop. Well, that's what happened at the very end, so I'll take the W. Of course, it's time to throw a few more up there. Number 14, Melee was the one killing Subaru, and something about him losing his memories made her deem it her only option. Number 15, the door had 4 gems instead of 3, leading me to believe that Subaru losing his memories was related to some witch factor or authority fuckery. And finally, Merope is that underground area that Subaru was at, which kind of seems like a lame one now that I mentioned the Phase 2 cut content, but when I wrote this down, I didn't know about that, so I'm just gonna keep it. And that is all for Phase 3. Let's see what Phase 4 has to offer in a few weeks. Thank you for watching. That marks the end of the best content that I have ever read so far from ReZero, and I'm also gonna start doing this new thing. It's basically like I'm gonna answer a few questions from comments and the outro. So if you ever want yours read in the outro, please do make sure to make some comments, ask some questions, and I'll try and get to them. The first one of all time will be, will this comment be in an outro? Hey, you never know, okay? Second, ReZero full character tier list stream when you catch up to Arc 7. There will be one after Arc 6, and then I will do another one after Arc 7, and then the side stories to see how much my opinions change. Will you ever make videos about other series? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is, there is a Mushoku Tensei anime video planned. I'm currently doing a bit of, for lack of a better word, field research before I start working on it though. And the last question for now, are you interested in doing more character analysis videos of ReZero? Of course. I'm mostly waiting to be caught up before I fully dive into ReZero's characters and worlds in individual videos. So when I'm caught up, you can expect some much higher effort videos in the phase reviews. If I didn't answer your question, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I'm only answering a few per video, but if you want yours to be answered, please do feel free to comment on this video, and I will get to it in the next one. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for the funny YouTube algorithm. You can also follow me on Twitter down below. I don't post about ReZero that much yet, but I will eventually. You can also join my Discord, where I live blog ReZero, and we talk about MHA and ReZero and stuff like that. And that's about it. Thank you for watching.